Hello, welcome to Spy Money. I am going to talk about the market a little bit. A lot of people don't really understand how the market works and so forth, and a lot of people think that it just keeps on going up, and that's just what's going to happen. And that's not the case. We have waves in the market. It'll go up for a while, go down for a while. Sometimes there are big spikes in the market where you'll see it just like take off, and sometimes it'll sell off really hard like it did back in February 21st, I think is when it started selling off. And when we're trading futures, as far as with the bot or mainly trading, we're looking more short term within the usually the last couple minutes, 5 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes. But like today, we have, there's a signal right here to go long. Here's another one to go long. That's really about all that we've had. 9:30 this morning, this one right here. I mean, just this one right here was, what, $750 possible money to have shorted. This one right here was another one, possible $415. So there's a lot of things we can look at, but what I want to focus on today is where are we going long term? And I talked about this in our Discord, and I've already told a few people that I personally know. And let's go ahead and look back at the last year on our daily chart. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. And then once we get this, I'm going to go ahead and turn off. Actually, let's see here. AMP will not allow me to do that. So hang on one second here. Let me open up another one. Let me go into my... Sorry about this. I was really prepared for this. When you have this particular data feed, the CQG, it only allows you to see the current contract of what it's going to be. And let me get this to load. For some reason, I was all prepared for this too, and I forgot about AMP does not allow, so I have to go into my rhythmic data. Bear with me here one second. Sorry about this. This is not what I had planned on doing. If I go, let me pull up a take profit account. Again, apologize for this. I was actually prepared. Let me see here. There we go. There it's popping up. So let me get rid of some of these indicators on here. That's what took so long. Okay, so here we go. So let's go ahead and open up this one here. This is a daily chart, and this is my Optimus Live account. And I'm going to show you just some things that to look at. And I don't know what the market will do. No one does. I know the institutions, I think that they know what's going to happen, because they usually make the rules. But then again, you have one institution that is fighting against the other one. They're all trying to make the most money. But when you look at this daily chart, it looks pretty much sideways. I know there's ups and downs in here, but it's pretty well sideways. But what really sticks out to me is this right here. This is when we first started selling off. The 21st, which was right here, was the first of the sell-off. Now, if we go back and look from the top of this one here, which is our top, and we bring this down over top of this one, we're getting real close to this. This is about, roughly 22,200 or so is where we're going to be to get up to that trend. And a lot of people say you can't trade trends and trend lines and things like that, and I disagree. You can usually draw out a trend, and for whatever reason, it will gravitate to it, and then once it gets there, it'll like pause and kind of go up and down, and then it will either sell off or push on through. In my particular what I believe on this is that we have a strong trend here. And I think that with today's news, I really felt that today we would get a pump up all the way up to here, which was not that far. But if you think about, our daily candles are not very much. I mean, for instance, this one here was only 180 points. This one yesterday was 260. So far today, we're 235. That's not very much considering, like over here we have 589. I mean, we've been moving 300 to 800 a day. I mean, this one right here, just the push up of this right here was 621 points. So, but now we are not moving much. And I personally think, this is not financial advice or anything like that, it's just what I see in the market that I have shared. And, I told my dad today, he's got a lot in stocks. And I told him, I said, we're coming up on this trend. And I really just think, based on what the market, or not the market, but what the economy is doing right now, our housing is starting to drop. It's not going up like it was. There's a lot of price reductions now. And when you start looking at that, you look at just inflation in general is through the roof. Our gas is finally coming back down to where it's affordable, but it's still, it's still up there. Our food cost is, still quite high. I mean, if you go to the grocery store, I do all the shopping, and every time I go to the store, it's like $300, and I don't even have that much. And if I go to Sam's, I buy a lot of meat there, and when I go to Sam's, it'll be $300 to $500 every time I go there, and that's just stocking up on just meats and stuff like that. That's not even buying anything outside of normal. Like if you go there and buy a new appliance or something, don't count that. But when you start thinking about what is going on in the world right now, we have possible World War III trying to start up. You've got Ukraine and Russia are, that's a mess. You start thinking about that. Then you look at LA. We have all those riots going on, and now we've got the Marines have been deployed along with National Guard to go over there and gather up illegals and get them out of our country. Whether you believe in that or not, I believe that if you're not legal, you shouldn't be here. It's just part of it. We have due process, and you follow that, and you get here like everybody else. It works the same if we want to go somewhere else to another country. We have to go through due process, and that's what it's for. So, we have all this going on, and when you think about everything going on, and then you look at the chart says the same thing that the world says right now, that it's in bad shape. So I personally think, it's just my opinion, don't do anything you shouldn't, you want to do or whatever. It's, you take care of your own finances. But I told my dad today to go ahead and pull everything out of his stocks and put it into his brokerage as cash. And I told him, I said, if you sell everything, you put it cash, and the market keeps on going up, you still have your cash. If the market sells off, you still have your cash. And I personally think that with the way the market sold off here, and this sold off in what 33 days. So in 33 days we went there, and now from here to here is 46 days. Hardly ever do we get a recovery of almost the same time. This was about 1.5 times. We hardly ever get that. If you look right here, you can see that there are some gaps to fill. Right here is one big gap, and then we have another gap that never filled, which would be right here. And then the big one for me, and we're going to have to go back a little further, so if we go back 3 years, is 15.8. Is it don't really show it on here, but it's right in here. It's about 16,000 or so. So if I take this one here, it's around 16,000. I don't know if we can see it on this chart, but if you go to like a SPX, you can see it. The top of it is about 16,000 or so, and the bottom of it is around 15.8. So you don't really see it here, but you do see it on SPX. So there's a zone right here that we never hit when we had this big old pullback. We got close to it. And I told everybody that I felt that we were going down to the 15.8, and we didn't hit it. So this is one gap that we never filled. And most people that trade know that the gaps are, something that always get filled. I mean, eventually that gap will get filled, but when? I think we're primed with everything going on because the market won't move unless they can blame it on something. It won't go up unless they say, things are better. Like right here, they said, Trump removed the tariffs on the majority, all the countries but China, and boom. So they blamed the rise on that. And then this right here was he put all the tariffs on, so then they sold it off. So this was tariff news, and this was tariff news. But this right here had nothing to do with any news. I don't believe that the market moves because of news. I believe the market moves and they blame it on something to justify what they did. So right now we've got this gap. We've got this gap. Now there might be more in there if I go back through SPX, but just looking at the market itself, this is what we have, and this is actually higher. So about right there. So we have this gap, and we still have not filled this gap. So the market will come back and get that. But you have to know when. And in my opinion, based off of this trend line, and the way the market, it respects those trend lines. Again, I really felt that we would get up to it today, but we never. Now, maybe my trend line should be more like this. Maybe it should be off of those highs right there. If you did that, the bodies, maybe that's where it is, like right here. Maybe my trend line is off a little bit based on what they're doing, but just based off of the tops of the wicks, this is where it would be. So that's just my opinion. I'm not telling you to sell your stocks or go short or anything like that. It's just not something I do. But I think that based off of this right here, this would, be a potential short of the market. And when you look at the whole United States and the world in general about what's going on, there's a lot of things that could easily make our economy go to the tanker. And I believe that they blame things. So I'm waiting on something to come out in the newsworthy so that they can justify this big sell-off. It's just like in the stock market itself. Whenever you have like Tesla, they have beat all numbers. They made money, but they didn't beat the numbers the analysts had. So let's just say the analyst said they should have $1.4 billion made this quarter, but they only made $1.3 billion. They still made $1.3 billion, but they missed the analysts of 1.4. So therefore they sell off the market. And they knew that they were going to sell it off before they even did it. They were just waiting on some sort of reason. And sometimes it will hit all of the numbers possible, and then they'll come back in and say, well, we didn't really like this report though. Even though it was okay, we just didn't really like it. And then they'll sell it off. So I think what they do mainly is just look at the overall market as far as people's positions, and they see that people have been buying it up a lot, or if they bought a lot of calls and things like that, so they will sell it off just to wipe out that money so they can make the liquidity. So that's just my opinion on it. Can't prove anything, but if you look back at the market and stuff, you'll see that. One thing I have not looked at is ES. I usually look at let's see here. So we'll go in here. Here we go. I usually look at NQ because I like it. But let's look and see what is going on with ES, which again, I have not done anything with ES to look at it. We have, it looks like a top right here, and that's pretty much what it is doing. So at 61.50, which is where I told everybody last year, when ES hit 61.50, look for shorts. And it hit 61.50 right here, real close to it. It actually pushed through and went to 61.65, then it went back up here to 61.67, and then it sold off. Now the reason I said that is because of charting, and I don't have it on here, but it was due to charting. And when you look at the overall chart, you will see things that you normally don't see. This big old drop right here. I mean, there's really no reason for this other than the market makers that pushed it up, they had to take profit. So they started taking profit, and well, now that they got down here, then they start buying it up, and they're bringing it right back up to this area. So I personally thought that we would see the news today push everything back up to those levels. Now, ES does not have to go up. ES could potentially stop right there. Because what will happen usually is it will come up before the all-time high or the last high, and then it will sell off. That's typically what will happen. You won't see it necessarily go up and retouch, because right here they've got everybody thinking, well, right there's the next resistance. But what they will do is they'll let everybody buy it up here, and then before it gets up there, they will sell it off, and they will take all of that money in those stops, and they'll have a bunch of calls that will just waste to nothing. And if you go back and look at this, you can also see that we have a gap right here, and we have a gap right here that has not been filled. So those are two gaps right there alone. And now there might be more back here. I don't have it charted out, but there may be more back in here. But just even to come back, they need to fill at least these two gaps. Now again, NQ is what I typically follow. So if we go back in and we look at NQ again, NQ is what I usually trade, so I know those numbers a lot better. And NQ actually shows a better charting than what ES does, in my opinion, just by looking at it. Now, that's not to say that NQ won't just push on through, pull back to it, and then take off. It may do that. The news is talking about now's a good time to buy. Everybody's telling you to buy. Well, you can't trust the news because they're going to tell you what the institutions want you to think. So everybody's throwing all of their money in here, and if they do that, I promise you, the institutions, which is like the banks and things like that, don't want retail to make money. They want the money. So they're going to tell you anything to get you to throw all your money in here so that they can short it all the way down. And then when you start selling down here because you've had enough of loss, then they'll start buying it up and run it back up, and then they've taken all your money. And that's what they do. It's non-stop battles. So that's why if you're going to buy stock, you just keep on buying. You don't look at it, and eventually you retire, and then you've got all this money. But in the short term, like if you're going to be retiring within, say, 3 to 5 years, you need to start getting your money out and start putting in the stuff that's more safe, whether it be treasury bonds or CDs or whatever, dividend stocks that are paying out a decent dividend, but even a dividend stock will sometimes get wiped out. So, but this is my outlook on the market, and this is why. Again, this has nothing to do with SPY money, for instance, the way we trade or whatever, because we trade the last 5, 10, 15 minutes is what we're looking at. The last hour. We're looking at the last hour to see what's going on, and then we're trying to capitalize on that money coming out. It's what we try to do, and we don't always succeed. We make mistakes because the market will move in ways that we don't think. Now, let's just for giggles, let's add the sniper indicator right here, and this is going to take a little bit. There it is. So it's in there. So let's go ahead and do let's do 100 just so we can see the signals better. There we go. So doing 100, if we look at this, this one told us to get in on this signal here. Now this is the daily chart. You cannot get in on this signal right there. That's $32,000 drawdown. I mean, you just couldn't do it. At least I couldn't. I couldn't stomach $32,000 drawdown. I don't trade a daily chart on this at all. If we go back in and we go to not Man of War, and we add this in there, then we can see that right here would be good, but we don't have another sniper signal. The daily chart is not something that works great for how we trade because there's the drawdown and such. We just couldn't do it. But if you look at this right here and you see how it's working, if we went to like a 4-hour chart, and if we go back to say 6 months, what I would be looking for is the 4-hour chart, that when it starts coming down and holding below our Man of War and we get a new signal coming down, that's what I would be looking at. This one right here on a 4-hour chart, you could have made $8,300 if you'd just stayed in it. Again, you probably wouldn't have done it, but this would have been a signal right here. And this one right here, not quite a signal. Let's look at some more, see if we can just find them. I never look at a 4-hour chart for the way we trade, but we look at it. This one right here would be a signal. This one right here would have been a perfect one. It's $20,000 that you could have made if you traded the 4-hour. The problem with the 4-hour is you have usually drawdown. Like, this wouldn't have been a signal, but right there is $3,000 drawdown, and we just don't do it. But if you go back and look at, say, an hour chart, let's see, right there is an hour, and let's do like 6 months. This right here would have been a signal to go long. That's $2,300. And then if we go back and look at our main chart that we trade, which is the 40 SPY money bar. Now Travis just posted he made $2,500 a day. Great job. And laid back, he made $1,800 a day, following the strategy that we use, the sniper with the man of war. It works really well. So going back on this one, get it to load. A little bit slow to load today. We still don't have any signals here. Nothing here. But what we do is we look at a shorter time frame, and we go in here and try to scalp. Like this one here, you could have got 670 all the way down to here would have been 820. We try to get $300 to $500 per trade, per contract. We're only looking at making $500 per contract on NQ, which our margin is $1,000. So we're looking to try to make 50% of the money that we use, which would be $500 on 1,000. That's what we look for. So when you start looking at everything on the chart and you start going back and looking at the overall direction of the market, going back to the daily, I think the daily really says a lot. We'll go back in here, go back to 3 years, and we see this right here, and based on everything we know that's going on with our economy, this makes sense. So give me your thoughts. Tell me what you think. Put it in the comments. See, what actually, where do you think the market's going? What do you think is going to happen? This is what I think. Again, not financial advice or anything, but just based on we didn't hit this, I think this is where we're going to pull back to. And very well may keep on going on down into this area here. You never know. I mean, if we broke out into World War III and everything else, I mean, the last thing we're going to worry about is our stocks. That's the last thing we're worrying about. But if you are short term, in the next 5 years, I mean, it's been said, there's one guy on YouTube that prophesies that we were going to have, 4 or 5 years of blood in the streets or something like that. I can't remember what he said. And we almost had it right here, and then we come up. I think that we're right there on the verge. We may be at the height today. I think we're going to have news again tomorrow at 8:30. That news is the PPI and unemployment claims. And we know that everybody's unemployed. There's the employment is not great. Of course, a lot of that is due to people just don't want to work. But we've got that news at 8:30 tomorrow, and then Friday we've got consumer sentiment, and we've also got the inflation coming out at 10 o'clock. In my opinion, I think with some of the news is going to pump it up like it did today. So today we got another pump up, and it really kind of depends on how this bar closes today. I mean, this is almost a doji right here. We start looking at candle patterns and stuff, and this right here is still bullish because it's green, but it's not very bullish. I mean, it went up and they pushed it back down. This could easily be the doji to be the first candle to come down, but I think that maybe tomorrow, since we didn't get the push today, this right here is 188 points. Maybe tomorrow's news will push this up, and then some of the people that I follow, they always say that Friday is going to be the day, the first day of the big sell-off, and it's coming. And there's some people out there that believe in different things, but this one group I kind of follow, they talk about that, and they don't know when or anything, but no one does. But if tomorrow, if we get the news to push this on up another 200 points, but you look at these bars. They're not moving. We're consolidating. And this could be that they are preparing, all this up here is selling off everything that they bought from down here. So if all of this right here is selling off and taking profit from this, it won't take much to make it do this right here. So give me your thoughts and see what you think. I'm not necessarily right. It's just what I see. And when you look at COVID, I called the COVID crash 3 days before it happened based off of the same thing. I just looking at charts and seeing what was going on. And 3 days before COVID, I was buying puts and everybody else was buying calls, and that got laughed at. And I made a bunch of money off of that. So I'm not saying to buy puts today. I never tell anybody what to do, but I don't think it'd be a dumb idea to put a little bit of money in it and just what if. But anyway, that's my thoughts for the day, and I hope everybody has a good day. Let's see if I'm right or wrong. It's no biggie to me either way. I prefer the market to keep going up. It helps people, but it also really puts everything back in line with where prices should be, housing market and so forth, because people can't even afford to buy houses anymore. It's just ridiculous. You guys have a great day. I'll see you next time.